Today we're going to talk on GDPR cases and fines in 2020. We are looking towards huge amount of fines which are being charged for people who are not GDPR compliant or they were having found having gross negligence. And my dear friends, GDPR is a civil law. So if someone does something wrong, there has to be fines. And you know how much fines is been provisioned in GDPR. Now let us look at what are the different fines. There were almost 220 fines till October, which they had collected. In December, there was no new fine. But the highest amount of fine which was collected was from Google. It was 50 million pounds. And that was in France. And it was its DPA called CNIL. And it was in September. Then obviously was H&M, Tim, British Airways, Wind. Again, Google in Sweden got punished for data leak. AOK, that's the health insurance company. BKR, that's the National Credit Registrar, and a company in Italy. And there was an unknown company whose name was not released from Deutschland. And now let's look at what are the GDPR fines, heavy fines which Google received. Now there had been 220 fines which were handed over to for GDPR violation in the first 10 months of 2020. And if you look at the fine which were issued exceeds 175 million pounds. But if you look at average number of fines issued per month between 2018 and 19, it has increased in 2020 by 260%. So now we are getting more and more GDPR conscious. Regulators are fining customers, consumers are getting more and more aware about their data protection rights. Now in July, the highest number of fines were issued in a single month since the GDPR was introduced, and it was 45 fines were introduced. If you look at the compliance list, that's very dismal, very poor. Like 20% of US, UK, and EU companies are fully GDPR compliant as I speak at end of 2020. So there is huge amount of opportunity for people who do compliance, like consultants or lawyers or technology lawyers. Now, what is the primary cause of data loss reported? Majority of the time, it is misdirected emails. This Information Commissioner's Office, which receives more and more mails about it. Now, let's look at the first fine, which was on Google, or rather not first, but the largest fine. It was 50 million pounds. Now, technically, this is from last year, it's 2019. But then there was an appeal launched by Google last month, and however, judges at France top court for administrative law dismissed Google's appeal and upheld the eye-watering penalty. Google was hit with a GDPR fine, one of the largest till date, for multiple infractions under various articles of GDPR. So this is very important: 5, 6, 13, 14. Now these are the articles frequently used for other fines too. While each violation is slightly different, the long and short of this is Google wasn't transparent in divulging what they harvested. Google profiles a lot and used data for ad targeting. Now, further also you will find ad targeting, or the ad tech space makes most of the risk when it comes to data protection. Now, could Google have avoided such kind of violation where it's a loss to loss to the word of mouth, loss to brand value, and loss to perception in their users? Yes, it could have been done. Google should have provided more information to users in consent policies and should have granted them more control over how their personal data is processed. Google doesn't feel important to do this, so they have to pay huge fines. The next company is H&M. These are cloth manufacturers, fashion street guys. Now, this involved the fine of almost 35 million pounds. Now, they were involved in monitoring of several hundred employees, their own employees. After employees took vacation or sick leave, that's horrendous. They were required to attend a return to work meeting. Some of those meetings were recorded and accessible to over 50 H&M managers. This, when employees are being monitored when they are not working, amounts to GDPR violations. Now, why were they doing this? So they wanted to gain a broad knowledge of their employees' private lives. Now, what would they would want to know? It could be harmless details like family issues and their religious beliefs, etc. Now, why were they doing this? So their detailed profile could help them evaluate their performance and make decisions about their employment. But making decisions about an employee when they are not doing their bona fide employer's work amounts to privacy violation or data protection violation or rights under GDPR. They could have avoided, yes, very much. Now, H&M appears to have violated the GDPR's important principle of data minimization. Now, what is this principle? This talks about you only gather so much amount of data which is required for you to do your job. Or it says don't process personal information, particularly sensitive data about people's health and beliefs, unless you need to for a specific purpose. H&M should also have placed strict access controls on the data, which they never did, because more than 50 managers were able to see the data. That brings them in the fix. And companies should not have used the data to make decisions about people's employment. That was really gross and brings you under the GDPR net. Many organizations who believe in monitoring their employees left and right by implementing BYOD policy, but installing some kind of software over the device and then tracking the person if he's going to even a coffee house. This all can bring you under GDPR net. Be cautious. Next is TIM. They were fined almost 27.8 million pounds. This is a telecommunication operator. It's called Iliad Italia. And they were fined by the Italian Data Protection Authority. And again, it was for series of infractions for last several years. It include a variety of unlawful actions. Now, this is majorly, emanating from aggressive marketing strategy. Many of the mobile telecom operators do this. TIM was scapegoat, I would say. Millions of individuals were bombarded with promotional calls and unsolicited communications, and they were not even in their contact list, or they were not even their customers, and some of them even were in exclusion list or a non-contact list. Yet they received call from TIM's, telecom promoters or TIM's telecom call center people to promote a package or scheme or whatever new launch they were doing. Now, could these violations could have been avoided? Yes, TIM should have managed list of data subjects more carefully and created specific opt-ins for different marketing activities. GDPR specifically says that you need to give customers opt-in messages, like whether you want to avail this service. That should be a small pop-up which can come on the screen when they visit such kind of websites. It could be done via physical medium too. Next is British Airways, 22 million pounds. They were fined. The Information Commissioner's Office, very active, very nicely maintained, fined 26 million for the breach, which took place in 2018. Now, let me make you aware that if you browse through internet, you would always see this figure called $238 million were fined, and this was the biggest if this could have gone through. This was original intention, and way back in 2019, but it got changed. What was compromised? The breach almost affected for 400,000 customers, and hackers got in their hands login details, payment card information, personal information like travelers' name and addresses. Now, this all could have been avoided. Even ICO said that this could be prevented, but British Airways did not have sufficient security measures in place to protect their systems, networks, and data. In fact, they didn't even have basics like multi factor authentication in place at the time of the breach. The airline should take a data first security approach. Need to invest in security solutions and ensure that they should have strict data privacy policies and procedures in place. And this is not right only for British Airways, but all the airways who are serving European customers, because GDPR is applicable there. Next is Wind. Now, Wind was fined for 17 million pounds. Now, this was due to unlawful direct marketing activities. Now, this is same like TIM. The enforcement action started after Italy's regulator received complaints about Wind's marketing communications. Wind had reportedly spammed Italians with ads without their consent and provided incorrect contact details, leaving consumers unable to unsubscribe to. See, this was with malicious intentions, maybe, because all mails will have unsubscribe link in the footer, but when you click on unsubscribe and it doesn't unsubscribe you from the service, that means you have goofed up, you have not taken this seriously. The regulator also found that Wind's mobile apps forced users to agree to direct marketing and location tracking. Now, this is also not allowed in GDPR, and that its business partners had undertaken illegal data collection activities. Now, this, in the Wind's case, could have been avoided. They should have established a valid lawful basis before using people's contact details for direct marketing purposes. This could have meant getting customers to consent, getting consumers consent, unless it could demonstrate that sending marketing materials was in its legitimate interest. Yes, in GDPR, which allows you to send marketing material if it is in your legitimate interest. For whatever reason you send direct marketing, you must ensure that consumers have an easy way to unsubscribe, and you must always ensure that company's privacy policy is accurate and up to date. Now, this last sentence which I said is applicable to every company who is involved in direct marketing activities. Google was again fined in Sweden. The Swedish Data Protection Authority of Sweden, SDPA, fined Google for neglecting to remove a pair of search result listings under Europe's right to be forgotten rules under the GDPR, which the SDPA ordered the company to do in 2017. Right to be forgotten is a right which is contested across the world. And internet, my dear friends, is like cockroach. The data on internet is like cockroach, like cockroaches. You try to remove them, they keep coming and they keep coming in multiples. Similarly, data, when it's on internet, it just gets replicated in various sites, and Google just promotes, or Google's algorithm ends up in promoting on the search engine search listings. So Google just amplifies this. So this could have been avoided. Google should have fulfilled the rights of data subjects, primarily their right to be forgotten. And when specifically SDP had ordered them to do so, they should have done it. Now, this right to be forgotten is also known as right to erasure, by ensuring a process was in place to respond to request for erasure without undue delay and within 1 month of receipt. Google could have avoided this fine. In Sweden, AOK is a health insurance company. It was fined $1.24 million, sorry, $1.5 million, and the Data Protection Authority of Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Now, what is this DPA Baden-Württemberg of Germany? Germany has different DPAs, and then there is a federal DPA. So this was one of the DPA which Germany has in its state. It imposed a 1.24 million pounds fine on health insurance company AOK. Now, AOK sets up a contest and lotteries using its customer personal information. It included their health insurance details. The company also used this data for direct marketing. Now, later, AOK tried to get consent for this, but it ended up in marketing to some users who had not consented. That's the game. You can't market to guys who have not consented. The regulator in Germany found that company had sent people marketing communications without establishing a lawful basis. AOK also failed to implement proper technical and organizational privacy safeguards. Now, this was to ensure they only sent marketing to those who consented. No consent, no marketing gimmicks. They could have done this to avoid it. Now, what could be a good takeaway from AOK's fine? Be very careful when sending direct marketing details, direct marketing materials. If you need people's consent, make sure you keep adequate, up to date records of who has consented. So, consent fatigue, I keep saying this, is what hampers people or businesses. You need to have consent logs that needs to be monitored properly, frequently, and what is not consented, nothing goes there. BKR, that is the National Credit Register of the Netherlands, the Dutch Data Protection Authority fined BKR for £830,000. Now, why was this charged? This was charged for charging individuals to access their personal information. GDPR is very clear. When a person wants to check their own information, what is present in the organization's database, they should allow it for free. BKR allowed customers to access their personal information for free on paper, but it was only once per year. BKR should have been charging individuals to access their personal information. It shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have been imposing a once per year limit. GDPR is very clear on this. You may only charge for access to personal information or refuse access if a person's request is manifestly unfounded or excessive. That means a person is asking more than he should get, or he is asking continuously. Then you can deny, but you can't apply certain rules which are not in compliance with GDPR. Now, this other company was fined for $800,000, Iliad Italia. Iliad Italia for processing its users' personal information unlawfully in numerous ways. Now, one such issue was collection of data, collection of consent for its marketing activities. which the regulator found that had been bundled with an acknowledgement of the company's term and condition. Iliad also was failing to store its users' communication data securely. Now, GDPR is very clear on this. If you look at GDPR, consent is defined very narrowly. If you're going to ask for a person's consent, you must make it specific to a particular activity. You cannot bundle your consent request. For example, when you asking people to agree to marketing and signed a contract using one tick box, that can be done. Data security is one of the cornerstones of GDPR. This company appears to have failed to implement proper access controls on its users' personal information. You must ensure that personal information is only accessible on a need to know basis. Note it, need to know basis. The last company which we are covering here is of unknown company. His name is not revealed, but the Netherlands Data Protection Authority handed out the largest fine to date to a so far unknown company, that was £725,000 for unlawfully using employees' fingerprint scans for its attendance and timekeeping records. Now, it took place during a course of 10 months. The point here is, under GDPR, biometric data like fingerprints are classified as sensitive personal data, or SPD. It is subject to more stringent protections. Now, this could have been avoided. Companies should have had a valid lawful reason to collect employees' fingerprints. They should have had technical measures in place to process data and clear process for deleting the data. You cannot collect data from employees without asking them. Data minimization is very important, and if we are constantly doing the same wrong for over a period of course of 10 months, then it amounts to gross negligence, or it amounts to malice, or it amounts to doing it when you know that it should have been done. So friends, this was different fines which was charged under GDPR. Fines have been increasing, compliance measures are not adequate. If you have some question answers, connect to me offline, send me emails, tweet to me. I'll answer you any questions based on GDPR. Thank you for listening to me. It was a great tutorial. Thank you.